afternoon. I'm Mimi Kumler, the Chief Operating Officer for TMC Healthcare, and I want to welcome you all to our special webinar, I'm on the Fence, Why Should I Be Vaccinated? This session is being recorded, and I am thrilled to have Melanie, who is our ASL interpreter, joining us to provide sign language interpretation for us today. TMC is Tucson's only community hospital, and it has been our honor and privilege to be so engaged in the vaccination effort for our community, alongside our great partners at the Pima County, the City of Tucson, and the State of Arizona. And I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about how today's webinar is going to work. I will be your moderator, and in just a minute, I'm going to introduce you to our panelists. We have a number of questions that have been submitted ahead of time, but if you have questions, you are welcome to submit them in the Q&A portion on the Zoom chat or enter them on Facebook Live. And then our expert panelists will answer those questions. We know that we may not have the opportunity to get through all of them. So now let me start by introducing our panelists. First, we have Dr. Teresa Cullen, who is the director of the Pima County Health Department. Dr. Cullen and her team at Pima County, as I said before, have been invaluable partners in this pandemic and in the vaccination effort that has resulted in having successfully administered 725,000 vaccines to date, or 40% of the people in Pima County. We also have Dr. Sean Elliott. Dr. Elliott is a pediatric infectious disease specialist with TMC1. He is an expert in infectious diseases and will be able to answer your questions regarding vaccines for children, as well as other medical concerns. Dr. Amy Biter is our Chief Medical Officer for TMC Healthcare and is prepared to offer her perspective on the hospital experiences. And finally, Dr. Jeffrey Lambert is an internal medicine doctor at TMC1 and also an associate medical director. And he is helping to field a number of questions about vaccine hesitancy that he has heard from his patients at his practice at TMC1. So let's get started. Dr. Cullen, can you share with us the state of the state in terms of what's happening with vaccines?
Yeah, thank you first off so much to TMC for your amazing relationship and partnership with us, as well as all the other partners we've had throughout the pandemic. As you guys know, it's been a lot of months. I want to talk briefly about where we are in cases, and then I'm going to go to the vaccination. Right now, the most recent data we have is showing 43 cases per 100,000. Remember, we estimate that Pima has about 1 million people, a little more than that, but so you can figure that out. If you just multiply by 10, we're at 430 cases in the last week, not on a daily basis. That's a weekly count. That actually brings us back to about where we were last October, which is great for us. It seems like we're coming out of this really giant hill that we had to traverse, go up and come down. And that leads us to vaccines. One of the major reasons why we believe we've been able to come out of that is the impact of the vaccinations, which you're going to hear a lot about today as different people answer your questions. I want to share some really great news. You know, we talk about the vaccination rate overall, and Mimi gave you that absolute number, but what we're seeing in those 65 and over, we believe about 85% of residents of the county who are 65 and over are vaccinated. A number that I think even myself a few months ago was hesitant to predict that we would be able to get there. And then as we go down, when we look at vaccination rates, we usually look at them, we decrement them, which means we decrease them by 10-year increments, 55 to 64. We're seeing in that age group around 65%. Obviously, we go down, and when we get to the younger, the 15 to 34, we're at about 37%. And we're going to talk today, I think, about vaccinations for children, which I know is probably a very important topic because it's been in the news so much. But overall, The county has done an amazing job partnering with people like TMC, with the city of Tucson at the Tucson Convention Center, the University of Arizona, who has run our state pod, are what I would say is ubiquitous mobile pods. It seems to me everywhere you go, hopefully you'll, as Dr. Garcia says, stumble into a mobile pod and choose to get vaccinated. But overall, it's been really a success story. I think what I want to caution people, however, is that we are done the easy part. The hard part now is to have this dialogue with people who are not vaccinated yet, and to try to answer people's questions, allay their fears if their failure to vaccinate is due to their fears, and also help educate and make sure people understand that there is a real benefit not only to yourself, to your family, but really to the community of Tucson. We all want to get back to business. The county is really committed to that. The city is really committed, and so are our partners. So with that, thanks for the opportunity to be here, Mimi.
Great, thanks, Dr. Cullen. So with those successful vaccination rates, Dr. Biter, what are we seeing here in the hospital at TMC? Dr. Biter, you are muted, I think, or we're having to.
After all these months, I still haven't learned how to use Zoom. My apologies. So thanks for having us here today. Good afternoon, everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically impacted our hospital and our community. And as Dr. Cullen pointed out, vaccination has been a critical factor to mitigate the burden of disease in the community and at the hospital. Here at TMC, during kind of the height of that hill that Dr. Cullen was talking about, we had 25 to 30% of our patients in the hospital were here with COVID. In the intensive care unit, most of our patients had COVID and were in the ICU for that reason. Now we see that less than 5% of our patients in the hospital have COVID, and we have very few in our intensive care unit. Vaccines have made a huge difference in the volume and the severity of illness that we are seeing, and it has allowed us to now open up and provide care for patients who still need care, but it may not be emergent care. Vaccines have been really important for us here at TMC. And just to comment on how we've done with our employees, we have reached our target, and over 75% of our employees here at Tucson Medical Center have been vaccinated. We're very excited about that, and we are also excited to continue to partner with the county to provide vaccines for the community. To date, we've provided about 130 vaccines. So thanks, Mimi.
Thanks, Dr. Biter. So let's dive right into some of your questions. The questions we get most frequently are about the vaccine and women of childbearing age. Is there an impact on infertility? Is there an impact on breastfeeding? Is it safe? Does it disrupt menstrual cycles? So those are just a few of the specific questions we've seen. I'm going to ask Dr. Elliott to kick off the answer to that question, and I believe Dr. Lambert has some to add as well.
Great, thanks, Mimi. I mean, yes, it's a very important question or questions and things that I've answered several times before. The first important thing I think for everyone to realize is that the messenger RNA vaccines that we're using, and now the new Johnson & Johnson vaccines, are biologically inert. They're not the sort of thing which is going to transfer from a mom who's injected in her arm into the fetus, into the breast milk, into the bloodstream. It's a transient trigger, I guess, of the immune response. Now, that's the science behind it, and the science is not as brand new as I think people are perhaps imagining. But what's the proof? I mean, we all want to, like, show me the bacon, right? And so the initial studies for the vaccines, of course, deliberately from a safety perspective, they excluded women who were pregnant, women who were nursing, et cetera. But that said, of course, women in those studies did become pregnant and did deliver babies during the course of the study. So we have the luxury of looking at those individuals long term. The safety and outcomes for every single one of those has been superb. To the point where the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, ACOG, which is our go-to body to approve things, has said, yep, it's safe, it's reasonable, it's good, and certainly the benefits to a pregnant woman or a nursing mother far outweigh any even theoretic risk. So that's kind of where the proof lies. And now that the standard in the country and worldwide is to proceed with immunizing women who are attempting to get pregnant, women who are pregnant, no impacts on fertility, no impacts on the baby, and certainly no impacts on the breast milk. And that specifically has been demonstrated also in looking at women who receive vaccine, expressed breast milk, and it was tested, zero presence of the coronavirus or the messenger RNA or anything in that breast milk. So all the evidence says it's a safe approach for everybody. I wonder if Dr. Lambert has something to add to that also.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer. I think you covered the highlights there. I just want to reiterate, I guess, a little bit. I've not seen any evidence that there's any negative effects on women who want to become pregnant, any fertility reduction, women or men. And I think it, in my opinion, it's very safe, regardless of if you're trying to get pregnant, if you are pregnant, if you recently given birth and you're breastfeeding. There may be some evidence I saw that there could be some antibody transmission to the fetus, which would actually be a beneficial effect of getting the vaccine, when you're nursing or breastfeeding, along with, similar to the way a mother can transmit some passive immunity to her infant for other diseases as well. So anyway, I think that's a good explanation, and I wouldn't have any hesitation about if I were. I'm past that time right now. My kids are older, but I would not have any hesitation with my wife getting pregnant or my own fertility with this.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Lambert. So there's a lot out in the news about what is happening with vaccines and children. And Dr. Elliott and Dr. Cullen, can you talk a little bit about where we are with children, which vaccines they're eligible for, where they could get those vaccines in Tucson?
Yeah, I guess I'll start and then turn it over to Dr. Cullen again for the state national perspective. Very exciting news. I imagine we've all seen this in the news releases. The Pfizer vaccine is about to win emergency use authorization for ages 12 years of age and up. Currently, that vaccine has been approved for getting emergency use authorization for ages 16 and up. This is a huge step, but it is not a step that has been taken lightly whatsoever. As with any studies of any medical intervention in pediatrics, one has to be very careful about the safety issues and also about the ethics of studying a patient population. A 12-year-old, and even younger, as I'll get to in just a second, cannot officially give consent, meaning they cannot, with full knowledge and disclosure, willingly agree to participate. So they have to be given to understand what the study is all about. And then their parents or their caretakers or the family on their behalf have to be able to give the consent to participate. So that is one of the reasons it took as long as it did. And also, I think, and this is very important, it's why such deliberate caution has been taken to get to the point of approving a first vaccine for use in kids. So as a practicing pediatrician and specialist in infections in kids, I'm overjoyed. This is fantastic. It's not the total answer yet. We have a ways to go. So what else is out there? I think some may know that Moderna, the manufacturer of the other messenger RNA vaccine, had started studies in ages 6 months of age up through age 17 to get a pediatric indication for their vaccine. And Pfizer is doing the same thing, as is Johnson & Johnson. So all three vaccine manufacturers that are currently functioning with emergency use authorization in this country to provide COVID-19 vaccines are all actively studying safety and outcomes of their vaccine products in kids down to age 6 months. Now, the timing that it will take to get those results is not going to be immediate. And again, that's because of the safety factors, the ethics involved in being deliberately incredibly cautious. However, the anticipation is, and if Dr. Collin has additional information, I would love to hear it, but the hope is by September, so by the start of the next school year, there may well be vaccines approved for all school-age children, which is going to help tremendously with herd immunity, with protecting our children, protecting their families, protecting our educators, the staff, the whole 9 yards. So it's an exciting time of I think, almost day by day and week by week discovery for the benefit of vaccines. Dr. Collin, do you have something to add, please?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the hard part about the science about it. But I think it is really true that we want to reassure people nothing has been done lightly. And that's actually why it's in May when we're first seeing the review by the FDA. And then tomorrow, a vote that will, all of us are assuming will endorse what the FDA just did for an emergency use authorization. From the county perspective, I want people to be aware of some numbers. There's approximately 48,000 children within these age groups, 12, 13, 14, and 15, that have not been eligible for the vaccine. We do anticipate that a few places will be able to administer the vaccine to that age group. TMC site, which is at Udall, is one of those. The University of Arizona site, which has been giving Pfizer all along. We have early indications that some of the pediatric offices will also start offering it. But I want to talk about the one thing Dr. Elliott talked about, which is not only in addition to doing the evaluation, but also to receive the vaccine, there is a consent process. And that consent process will include either that, just like it will for any other vaccine, if you're a child or underage, that you will have a parent or a guardian consent for you if you're the young person to receive the vaccine. Overall, I think we're really excited about this. The timeline of September is what we are all looking for increased expansion of who will be eligible to receive the vaccine. Just as I started off talking about, let's get the county open to business. Let's get the schools all open. You know, all of us are very committed to that. The vaccination process itself and enabling vaccines to be available to this age group will help us accelerate our ability to get kids and everybody back to the school area. So from a public health perspective, we were anticipating this. Don't think this just happened in the last week. This has been ongoing since the vaccine started getting evaluated and researched. People have been trying to understand and look forward to the day that we saw yesterday where the FDA gave an emergency use authorization for this age group. So I actually think as a parent and a grandmother, I think this is really exciting for us as a community.
So as a mom, I would have the question, what kind of side effects might happen to my child when they get this vaccine? Dr. Elliott, do you want to start?
Yes, I'll take that. Absolutely. So the information released by Pfizer and preliminary from the other manufacturers is that the side effects are no different than any of us who might already have been vaccinated experience. And actually, in many cases, even far less significant. So the vaccine site pain or tenderness, the aching muscles, the low-grade fevers, feeling kind of blah. There are many children in the study who had none of those findings, and those that did had overall mild and only rarely moderately severe symptoms, very much like the 3 vaccine trials for those 3 vaccine products in the country. Importantly, not only was the safety incredibly well established, but so too was the outcome. And in fact, it appears that this age group, the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, had, if anything, even a higher antibody response or a higher vaccine response than have young adults who received the same vaccine from Pfizer. So this is great. Boy, we're giving our kids monster immunity for a much lower price in terms of a little site tenderness. Awesome. 2 thumbs up.
Great. Thanks for that. So what I heard was Pfizer is approved down to 12 years old, and Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J are all in studies. More information to come. Thank you. Okay, there's a great question that has come through. If a person has a low platelet count due to some health issues, what are the chances that the COVID vaccine could create some kind of thrombocytopenia? Dr. Lambert, do you want to field that question?
Yeah, I can take that. So there is, we've all heard about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the reaction where some very, very small number of people will get blood clots, and that can be associated with a low platelet count. However, there's no evidence that I have seen that if you have a low platelet count, that you're any more at risk for getting a reaction like this, or you're any more at risk for getting a lower platelet count or having the vaccine somehow affect the platelet count. So really that's not really something I would be concerned about. I mean, if I had a low platelet count, not really something that I would take into account, considering to whether to get the vaccine or not.
Great, thank you. How do we know this messenger RNA? How do we know that there aren't long-term effects, that we're going to wake up in 2 years and find that we missed something in the science? What's your take on level of confidence that this vaccine delivery system is safe for us?
So that's a great question, and I realize that there's a lot of concern because when something is new or we haven't heard of it before, that it can raise some concerns or anxiety about it. But really, the best way I can think of to look at it is just look at what we know about exactly how the mRNA vaccine works. And I think Dr. Elliott touched on this a little bit earlier. It goes into your cells and it causes the cells to produce the protein that stimulates your immune system to have the reaction that we want it to have, to create that protection from COVID. If you ever see the real COVID virus, then you're protected from it. And once that happens, that mRNA vaccine is broken down like any other molecule in our body, and it becomes a byproduct and a waste product, and it's gone. Our body gets rid of it because it's not needed anymore. So it doesn't incorporate into our DNA. It doesn't even go into the nucleus of the cell where it could do something. That's not something that happens. It does its duty and it does it well, and then it's gone. And we don't. So they're just based on that sort of basic science knowledge that we have about the vaccine. There's nothing to make me think that it's going to somehow come back and cause long-term side effects that we wouldn't be able to predict. And so I really have a lot of confidence that, even though it is a relatively new form of vaccine, it's not something that we're going to, years down the line, we're going to think, we shouldn't have done that. It just doesn't make sense that it would cause problems long-term. And we do have, about a year of data now that's really showing that it's not causing any significant problems.
I wonder if I could add to that, and that's a fantastic description, Dr. Lambert. I think many people may be surprised to know that the messenger RNA, which is actually injected, lasts in the human body unadulterated for maybe an hour or a couple hours at most. It doesn't hang around for days or weeks or years. And also, as you were saying, it's the code for a protein. It's not the actual gene. We're not actually modifying our genetic code in any conceivable way. So you're right, the science would suggest that there's zero theoretic risk. The other thing which I think many people don't realize is that although the messenger RNA vaccines have been listed as being brand new and novel, the science behind them and attempts to make similar vaccines has been in existence for well over a decade. And so that's a long history of safety studies, outcome studies, primate studies, the whole 9 yards. So this is actually a far better tested vaccine construct and concept than perhaps many people realize. And to date, the safety has been uniformly superb. So I share your optimism, and I certainly think it is a safe vaccine. The short answer to the question, however, has to be, well, we don't honestly know with this specific vaccine much more than the year's experience, which Dr. Lambert has mentioned. But every expectation based on every study possible is that it is an incredibly safe, perhaps one of the safest vaccines which we know about in human science.
And this is, Terry, I'd like to echo that. And I think what I also want to point out is the amount of surveillance that is occurring right now. To echo what was just stated, what Dr. Elliott stated, you know, if you did get a vaccine and you signed up to be part of the surveillance program, you're getting that, oh, you're 6 weeks out, or you're 10 weeks out, or you're 12 weeks out. So we have a surveillance system in place, and we are seeing no signals. What we would be looking for are early signals that there may be something happening, and we're not seeing any of that. So while we know there are some side effects that people talk about, the primary one is pain at the site where you got an injection, which would be probably for any of us when we got an injection. We're not seeing any signals that we have any side effects occurring up to this year out that we've been able to observe. So I think the good news is that the surveillance system is in place for us to be able to report. And remember that reporting is coming from people that receive the vaccine, as well as the medical system and the clinical system.
Thanks, Terry. So Dr. Biter, is vaccine shedding a medical proven thing is one of the questions we've received.
So vaccine shedding as it pertains to COVID vaccine is not a real thing. Vaccine shedding with other vaccines maybe, and let me just explain a little bit about that. Vaccine shedding is the concept of the body releasing viral particles from vaccine and theoretically creating some degree of risk to others. That does not happen with the COVID vaccine. Some vaccines are what we call live attenuated vaccines, and they are weakened viruses that stimulate the immune system. Sometimes in those live attenuated vaccines, there can be a small amount of minor viral shedding, but that does not occur in the COVID vaccine. In fact, there are no COVID vaccines anywhere that contain any live viral particles. I would say that it is not often in medicine where we say that there is zero chance of something happening, but with the COVID vaccine and viral shedding, I would feel very comfortable saying that there is zero chance that that would happen.
Great, thanks, Dr. Biter. So what about variants? So there's a lot of conversation or studying that the variants of the COVID virus and whether or not the current vaccines are efficacious against those variants and or effective against the variants. And so Dr. Elliott, what are your thoughts about if you were on the fence about getting the vaccine because all of the variants are coming, are you willing to take the risk that the vaccine is going to cover them?
Yeah, thanks, Mimi. If I were on the fence, I'd get off it super fast because now is the time to get vaccinated before we encounter any worse variants. So up until very recently, the three variants which we were worried about in the United States were the B.1.1.7 from the United Kingdom, the P.1 from Brazil, and the B.1.351 from South Africa. All three vaccine products currently approved by emergency use authorization in this country show benefit, show good efficacy against all three of those variants in varying degrees of tests. Now, anybody watching this will have seen media reports like, well, they have decreased efficacy. That doesn't mean ineffective. That simply means compared to the response to a wild type, in which case, again, all three vaccines we have had monster immunity against the wild type. Even a 6-fold decrease in that, which is the case with the South African variant, still leaves protective efficacy from the current vaccines against the current variants. Now, the newest entry to the field is the new variant of high concern coming to us from the country of India. And to this point, it's so early. This has really just been what, the last week, 2 weeks, that it's being publicly released and studied. So we don't yet know the vaccine efficacy against that. It is more contagious. It may be more virulent, to use the scientist term, but it's just too early to predict how the vaccines work. I say that not as a, oh my goodness, it's coming, but more of a matter of that nature is really good at changing underneath our feet. And the longer we wait and have people who are unimmunized or underimmunized, the higher the potential for virus to live unadulterated in our country and to go through natural mutations like these variants are doing. At some point, we're going to select out a super monster resistant variant, which we won't be able to encounter. That's not a threat. That's just a note of sheer reality. And so the longer we all wait to get vaccinated, the higher the chances are of that occurring. The more we get vaccinated, the sooner we get vaccinated, the sooner we reach herd immunity, the far decreased chances of that super variant making itself known. So if for no other reason than to protect myself and my friends and family, now's the time to get off the darn fence and get vaccinated before it's too late.
You know, Dr. Elliott, if I had been on the fence about getting the vaccine and I'd heard you say that, I would get off of the fence right now. And actually, I think that answered, there was a question that came through the Q&A about what do you say to someone who's waiting for a better vaccine? And I think your answer was just perfect, that if the longer we wait, the more opportunity that the COVID virus has to mutate and create something more difficult to manage. So thank you for that. Okay, what about the additives or preservatives that are in the vaccines? So that's a question from a parent, particularly thinking about what a lot of children receive a number of immunizations that have additives or preservatives in them. Were the same ones used in the COVID vaccine, or are there new additives that we need to learn about? Dr. Cullen or Dr. Elliott?
I think I'll defer to Sean.
We all defer to Sean.
Dr. Cullen.
Well, we do have a pediatric infectious disease person in the room.
Fair enough. So to the messenger RNA vaccines, so again, the ones by Pfizer and Moderna, the number of preservatives and other substances are even fewer than we encounter in routine pediatric vaccinations. The reason for that is that the messenger RNA construct or product itself is far more stable, so long as it is maintained at the proper refrigerative or freezer temperatures. Even the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which uses a viral vector, meaning an inactivated, non-pathogenic virus to carry the same message that the messenger RNA vaccines do, even that is very shelf stable. Certainly there were no new preservatives, no new exposures, and what any child might encounter in routine primary vaccinations and the booster shots and the adolescent vaccines is what at the most they would encounter with these current vaccine products. And so no additional, certainly no new safety concerns whatsoever from a vaccine reaction.
Great. Thank you for that. So I really appreciate that people are taking the time to think about their lifestyle and whether or not the vaccine is compatible with some of their lifestyle choices. And so Dr. Biter, if you use drugs or alcohol, is it safe to get vaccinated?
Yes.
Thank you for that.
I'm aware of absolutely no evidence that would deter or cause me to recommend against getting a COVID vaccine in someone who uses either recreational drugs or alcohol.
Can you have a drink on the same day that you get your vaccine?
Yes.
Just
Great.
not right before you drive yourself to the vaccine site. That's all.
Great.
After. Good point, Dr.
Great.
Lambert.
So Dr. Cullen, that's a great segue to transportation issues and the vaccine. So what happens if somebody doesn't have their own vehicle and is struggling to find transportation to a vaccine site?
Okay, I'm going to answer that, but I want to answer the other question too.
Okay.
Because you may be aware, we do Vax After Dark down on 4th Avenue, right? It's our really cool thing you can do. I wanted to do how to protect yourself from zombies with the COVID vaccine, but nobody else would buy off on that. But we actually put on our website, one of our most trafficked questions was, can you drink or smoke pot and still get the vaccine? And the reason is when we went out and looked at why people were hesitant, we kept getting asked this question. I had heard that if I got the vaccine, I couldn't drink for 30 days after. I had heard that if I got the vaccine and I had smoked pot within the last 30 days, it would negatively impact that. So I really want to echo what Dr. Biter said, because this is a real concern, especially in that the 25 to 40-year-old age group that we've been really targeting right now because of, it's Friday night and people want to go out. So not that we're encouraging you to drink or use or smoke marijuana, but if you do, it's not an indication for you not to get the vaccine. Now, the great news that Mimi is talking about is, what do you do if you don't have a ride? Well, this has been an issue since we started vaccinating people, and we at the county have the availability that if you call our help desk, we can arrange a ride for you. But in addition, Uber has made rides available in the community, and I think we'll probably put up the way that you can locate that. But in addition, I did see today that the current administration is going to release very soon that both Uber and Lyft will make available rides in the community. The relationship with Uber had been that you get 2 rides if you need 2 vaccines, right? You get a ride to the administrative point of distribution, you get a ride home, and then you get a ride for your second shot. So don't think that you'll only get 1 free ride, because you'll get 2 free rides. And it's really important that people understand that this is a public service. We're very grateful to the ride sharing platforms. We're grateful to the administration for trying to coordinate this. We're really grateful for the drivers in Pima County that are more than willing to transport patients, but please don't let access because of lack of transportation be the reason why you're not getting a vaccination. That can easily be overcome. If you have any problems, please call the Pima County Help Desk.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Cullen. All right, we have a few more questions. Dr. Lambert, is there anything happening with dental effects or dental side effects in relationship to the vaccine?
So the quick answer is no. There's no evidence of dental problems or oral diseases that result from getting a vaccine. I was searching this, and I saw there was one study ongoing in Europe evaluating for oral and dental side effects. So we may have more information on that, but at this point, there's really no evidence currently, and there's no reason to believe that there would be a cause just based on how the vaccine works again.
Great, thank you. Any difference in effectiveness between the vaccines? And so there might be someone who's on the fence because the vaccine that they think is the best is not available to them. So Dr. Elliott, do you want to kick us off? And I would imagine probably each of the panelists might have something to contribute.
Yeah, thanks, Mimi. So on the surface of things, there would appear to be a difference in efficacy or benefit between the messenger RNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And just to put numbers on the table, both of the messenger RNA vaccines, Moderna, Pfizer, posted around 94-95% efficacy rates. Now, this was earlier in the pandemic. A lot of the vaccine studies were done when people were exposed to the wild type, which actually itself was a mutant, but to the primary circulating strain of the SARS coronavirus 2, versus the Janssen pharmaceutical, the Johnson & Johnson product, which globally posted a 65% efficacy. So that's a good 30 percentage points lower. In the United States, it was actually closer to the mid-70s, 73, 75%, depending on when the data was released. But it's important to keep in mind that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was tested later in the pandemic. And the patients who received the vaccine more likely would have had one of those circulating variants I mentioned earlier in this talk. So it's probably not a good idea to compare, the Moderna, Pfizer to the Johnson & Johnson. It's almost like apples and oranges. The point is, however, that all three vaccines are still very beneficial and provide a significant benefit to anybody who does happen to be exposed to the virus, does happen to develop COVID-19. All three vaccines are incredibly good at preventing them from getting bad disease. So the horrible outcomes that we're aware of, perhaps some on this talk have experienced family members, loved ones, friends who are hospitalized in an intensive care unit and potentially died. That's the severe thing that is prevented by the vaccines. And so fantastic, great, wonderful. They're all excellent for that. All the other stuff is gravy. And I think if you were to do a head-to-head comparison today, you might find similar outcomes for all three vaccines. The point, though, that I think we really want to make quite clear is it doesn't matter which vaccine you get so long as you get one of them.
Thanks, Dr. Elliott, for that answer. Anybody want to add anything else?
Yeah,
No,
I
I
would.
think that was very well said.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and I would echo that. What many of us say is the vaccine that you need is the one that gets into your arm the soonest. So really, we just want to get people vaccinated. We also know that people make decisions about which vaccine to get based on whether they're able to schedule a second shot. So I'll just share personally, my life is a little chaotic. And so I was like, I just need one and done, because the odds of my making sure I can get back somewhere in 3 or 4 weeks seemed overwhelming to me. So so J&J is a great opportunity for that. I want people to also understand that from a county perspective, while we are making J&J available as well as Moderna and Pfizer. So we're not targeting a certain group with J&J, which was some original press was out about that. But now it's, if you want the J&J vaccine, it's there. At many of our mobile pods that are doing second shots, in order to make sure that, which means we're going back to a place we've already gone, but it's not a permanent site. We offer J&J for people that show up for the first shot, so that we don't need to go back there again just because of the logistics that associated with that. So I would agree with Dr. Elliott and Dr. Biter. The key thing is to just get a vaccine.
Great. Thank you. So we're down to our last few questions. So one is, that came up in the chat, is recommendations for people with a history of severe allergic reactions. Dr. Lambert, how do you handle that when you have patients with history of severe allergic reactions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the analogy I like to use is our immune system is very good at identifying what it is that it's reacting to. And so if you've had an allergic reaction to something in the past, there's almost no chance that you'd get an allergic reaction to this new vaccine just because you've had an allergic reaction to something else in the past. It's similar to a food allergy. Like one of my sons has a severe anaphylactic reaction to hazelnuts, but he can eat almonds, because the immune system knows the difference. So if you've had a severe allergic reaction like anaphylaxis to something in the past, you were safe to get a vaccine. Now, what we've done at the vaccine sites is we've made some accommodation for that, and we're observing people for a little bit longer period of time if they've had a severe allergic reaction in the past. So they'll ask you to stay for 30 minutes instead of 15 minutes. There'll be medical personnel available for any questions, any concerns that you have. But the main thing is you can still get a vaccine, any of the vaccines, if you've had a history of allergies or an allergic reaction. The only time where you shouldn't is if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the Pfizer vaccine itself. Then you don't want to get another one. I mean, that's to keep it simple. I'll leave it at that for right now, but that's the basic answer to that.
Great, thanks, Dr. Lambert. So is there anything else, panelists, as people weigh the pros and cons or the risks and benefits of getting a vaccine that they need to know?
I guess I'll take a stab at that. I'm hoping from all we've shared so far in this talk that there's a whole bunch of pros, and I hope that we've addressed the cons successfully. That said, I completely understand anyone who has hesitation about any vaccine product, that they are going to have questions which they feel have not been answered. So when I have a conversation with someone who is vaccine hesitant, and I do, and I have, and I will, my first point is to be very open, receptive, and to try to hear, where is the concern? What is the actual question? And what can I offer which may address that question? Now, it may be that the fear is nameless, and I'm worried, I'm anxious, and dear heavens, this pandemic is filled with tons of fear and scare and loss and et cetera and so forth. But after we get to the actual meat of the question, then to try and address that with what evidence is out there, right? Science is real, science speaks, but also be very receptive and supportive of emotional reactions, because that's just as real as a knowledge-based concern. So I guess I encourage all of us, if we're trying to gain information, to have a difficult conversation with a friend, a loved one, a family member who themselves is vaccine hesitant. For me, the approach has worked best to truly listen first and then try and get to the heart of the matter. Other than that, I'd have a hard time coming up with any specific cons to getting a vaccine. We talked about the fact that this is a newer product, but yet it's been well tested in the past. This is something we're not experienced with, and could it affect nursing, pregnancy? Said no, we talked about that. Even the vaccine reactions, although I'm sure we all heard from friends who said my arm fell off and had to be surgically reattached. Well, okay, yeah, my arm hurt too when I got Moderna, but that was a small price to pay for not winding up in the hospital. So I'm sort of rambling here, but just I think the best thing that we can offer is to be loving, discerning, listening partners in a conversation, and to be very transparent and honest in our responses.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott, for that. I'm going to give each of the panelists an opportunity to talk about conversations or approaches with vaccine hesitancy. So I'll let you think about that, doctors, and ask Dr. Elliott to answer the question. If someone has recently had the COVID virus and they currently have COVID antibodies, is it wise or prudent to get a vaccine?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question. The short answer is yes, but here's the why. When a human being gets COVID-19, gets infection from SARS coronavirus 2, we mount a fairly broad-based general immune reaction. And it has been shown that those of us, and that's about 80%, who had mild or even asymptomatic disease, our immune response may be shorter lived, perhaps as low as 3 months, maybe 6 months. And we definitely know that reinfections have occurred, likely due to that lower level immunity. Contrast that to the immunity we get from the vaccine, which is one specific trigger point of the virus itself. And to that one specific point, we make huge immunity, which lasts for a very long time. So I might have had COVID-19 early before I got the vaccine, but I need the vaccine to try and prevent me from getting COVID a second time or a third time, because the vaccine gives me a much higher level of antibody to a specific and very important part of the virus. So the answer is yes. If you've had the disease, even if you think you've had the disease, do not rest assured that one is protected against getting it again, because people have, and one could. The vaccine is a very good idea.
Great, great. I'm gonna go quickly through a couple of questions. I think there's some specific about vaccine hesitancy that I'm gonna ask you to. There was a question on Facebook Live about whether personally you would give your vaccine to one of your 12-year-olds. And so as the mom of an 11-year-old, I want to share that I called 3 Moderna trial sites to try and enroll my 11-year-old. And I think I may have been first in line to have my 16-year-old vaccinated. So from my perspective, I have a lot of confidence in the science behind the vaccine. And as soon as she is able, my 11-year-old will be vaccinated. So with that, if one of you would like to address vaccine hesitancy that comes from either religious or political views. That's some of the folks in attendance are working through either loved ones or friends who are hesitant for those reasons. Anyone have experience with that kind of conversation or approach?
I'll just comment that I had a conversation with some religious leaders not too long ago, and one of the kind of myths that has been out there is that the COVID vaccine contains fetal components or is somehow made using fetal remnants. And that is not true. And in fact, if you go to the local diocese website, Bishop Weisenberger has done a video recording explaining that that is indeed not the case, that he himself has been vaccinated, and that he encourages his constituents to get vaccinated as well.
I think we have this dialogue regularly with the community, from political or religious or moral or ethical or unclear beliefs. And I want to, first off, I think what Dr. Biter just said is really important. We've been working very closely with the diocese. Actually, as I say, the bishop is hopefully my best friend, because he's been wonderful and really made it easy for us to reach out to the parishes, just like the interfaith community has. So we've done lots of work with them. You know, we did some early work with the African American churches around historical trauma related to people of color, communities of color, being subjugated to research that didn't include them and didn't really include informed consent. So we've tried to mitigate some of those concerns. I think, however, what Dr. Elliott said is really important. We, just like we do with any transformative dialogue, which is what we want to have if we want more people to get vaccinated, is to have a discussion of where people are for innumerable reasons. You know, your family, your faith, your political affiliation, your historical experience. And I think from a public health perspective, we want to actively encourage vaccination, but continue to be respectful of people that are making a decision to not vaccinate, and yet at the same time continually can create the opportunity for ongoing dialogue, information, and a reliance on the science. And when all else fails for us, that's what we try to go to. We go back to the science. And I think you've heard a lot of the science here today that hopefully can help mitigate some of those personal concerns that people have, either for themselves or their family members or their community, for why they are not vaccinated.
Thanks, Dr. Cullen. Dr. Lambert?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I'll just get personal for just a minute. I'm a Christian, and I believe in God's protection and healing for us. And I also believe that the medical care that we get and the medical science that we have is a gift. And it's something that it doesn't conflict with what I believe, you know, my faith that I have. It goes right along with it, really. And so that's, and I think there's a lot of mistrust of our system sometimes. And I think that's just something that we, like Dr. Cullen was saying, we have to look at the evidence, and we have to some degree, we have to trust the people that are doing the research. I'm not doing the research myself. You know, I have to trust the CDC, and I have to trust that the science is real, because we can look at the results and we can see that there's evidence that it's effective. And I think it's important to keep health out of the political realm as much as possible, you know, and not make it a political debate, but just keep it focused on what's best, you know, for me and my practice, what's best for the patient who's in front of me right now, and look at, that's a great question. Look at the pros, look at the cons. I think we've gone over those pretty well here. And I'm not trying to sell anything. I don't do that in my practice. I don't try to sell people on medicine or vaccines, but I think that if you look at it and you weigh what's the risk and what's the benefit, it makes a lot of sense to get vaccinated. The benefit just seems to really outweigh any risk that we know and any potential possible things in the future that we don't know yet. So I just really encourage people to look at for themselves, what is the risk and what is the benefit of this decision, just like you would with any decision, and then do the right thing.
Great. Thank you all so much. Before we start to wrap up, Dr. Cullen, do you want to remind us where your latest pop-ups are?
Yes, but I can't remember because there's so many of them, so you can see those. So we'll put the link in there, but just be aware there is a pop-up coming to your corner. Our goal is to make these easy for you to come to. I also want to express my gratitude to the state and to FEMA. As you know, we have 2 mobile pods in the county right now. They are here for 6 weeks, perhaps 8 weeks. They are staffed by FEMA as well as Pima County Health Department, as well as volunteers. And we're really grateful for them. You can see right there where they are right now at Greyhound and Wheeler Taft today. So our hope is that there's a clinic near you that you'll be able to go to get a vaccine at.
Great, thank you. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists today. The information you shared was fantastic. I think you did a great job. And I want to thank all of our guests. I really appreciated your thoughtful questions, and whether it was personal to you or you're thinking about the health of our community, I appreciated you taking the time to engage today. And if you want to go back and watch a portion of this webinar again, or the whole thing, the link will be mailed to everyone who was registered for today. And so on behalf of Tucson Medical Center, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And thank you to Melanie for your interpretation services. We appreciate it.